Today, I want to talk about the biggest myth of the national obesity epidemic. The biggest myth is that if you're obese or overweight, it's your fault. Today, 3/4 of American adults are obese or overweight, including 40% of American teenagers. Back when I was growing up, childhood obesity was almost unheard of. But you don't need statistics to know that something has changed. Look at the photographs of beaches or state fairs from the 1950s. Something has changed, and it isn't human nature. We haven't suddenly become lazy or gluttonous. What has changed is our food system, our diets, and the hormone-disrupting chemicals in our food, in our water, and our soil. We are being mass poisoned. Today, they tell you that you have obesity, like it was some kind of contagious disease. They treat it as if your body malfunctioned, and they give you a shot to control it. Or they make it about your lack of self-control. Well, that's an insult to anyone who has tried and struggled to lose weight. So what are they ignoring when they make it all about you and your body and your willpower and your character? And the solution is always a shot or a pill that somebody is going to cash in on. What they're ignoring is a food supply that's loaded with high fructose corn syrup and seed oils and hundreds of artificial additives and flavors and processed carbohydrates that don't exist in nature and that are banned in other countries. They ignore a skewed system of subsidies that make these unnatural, ultra-processed foods cheap. They ignore chemical contamination from pesticides that is wreaking havoc on our body. Now, let me tell you what we're going to do about it. We're going to change the subsidies so that everyone can afford safe and wholesome food. We're going to get industry money out of government so that consumers and doctors can actually trust our agencies again. We're going to make school lunches nutritious again. We're going to ban harmful chemicals from the food supply. We're not going to force or coerce or shame anyone. We're going to lower the costs and lower the barriers and get rid of the perverse incentives and clean out the chemicals so that the American people won't be swimming upstream anymore through a soup of toxic substances just to be healthy.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. It is a new day. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is in the head of the HHS. This is the new MDs, moms, doctors, and scientists working together to heal our children. My name is Zen Honeycutt. I'm the head of Moms Across America, and I'm blessed to be the mom and the MC in this fabulous panel. The host of this wonderful show is Dr. Michelle Perro. She's a 45-year pediatrician, and her organization is GMO Science. Welcome, Michelle.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And we also have our scientist is Dr. Stephanie Seneff, and she is the author of the book Toxic Legacy. And we're thrilled to have you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
How exciting is it that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the head of the HHS?
Woohoo! We're so excited. We can't believe it's happened. It's so refreshing.
It's thrilling. And the clip we just watched on obesity, the obesity myth, really just pulls together everything that we need to do for this food supply and everything that he said he was going to do months and months before, and now that we're hoping that he'll do now. We're going to get to what we can do to support Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the head of HHS towards the end of the show. But before that, we're going to address some very important issues, probably some of the most important issues in America today. That is obesity, neurodevelopmental delays, and then we'll get into how we can support Kennedy and make America healthy again. So let's get started first with a little bit of context here. According to the CDC, 41.9% of Americans are obese, and it's a serious, common, and costly chronic disease. More than 2 in 5 U.S. adults have obesity. This affects some groups more than others, including non-Hispanic and Black adults and adults with less education. Many adults with obesity have other serious chronic diseases, including diabetes and heart disease. And obesity accounts for nearly $173 billion in medical expenditures in 2019. And keep in mind, that's just the obesity expenditures. That's not the related, health issues like diabetes and, many other neuropathy, gut health issues that come along with it. So this means that more than 100 million adults have obesity, and more than 22 million adults have severe obesity. The prevalence of obesity increased from 30.5% from 1999 to 2002 to 41.9% in 2017 to 2020. So that's a huge jump in a very short period of time. During that time, the prevalence of severe obesity increased from 4.7 to 9.2%. That's 10% in 10 years. So keep in mind that obesity means having a body mass index of 30 or higher. Severe obesity is defined as having a 40 BMI of 40 or higher. So for example, a 5.5 woman who is 180 pounds or wears a medium or a large would be considered obese. So this is a serious health issue. Obesity is linked to diabetes and heart disease, which affects 72% of Americans. And Stephanie, let's talk about this now. It's diabetes is the #1 killer in America, heart disease. If we're going to make America healthy again, we have to face obesity. And the question is, are these weight loss drugs the miracle answer that the pharmaceutical companies are telling us they are?
I certainly think they are not. And I've become interested in them. As soon as I heard about them, I started reading about it. It's actually, of course, very fascinating biology behind it. And it's the same thing that is wrong with the whole drug concept, is that you take a drug to pretend to fix a problem, but you don't fix the problem. You just take the drug that does what your body should have done naturally. But when you don't do it naturally, it doesn't work the same way. And so it ends up messing things up in a big way. And these drugs have lots and lots of side effects, as we will get into. I first want to, so this is these GLP-1 agonists or analogs, which are drugs that appear to be like GLP-1, but they're not. And there's several of them. And there's one name, technical name is semaglutide, which is both Ozempic and Wegovy. And Wegovy is a lower dose. So these are, you probably heard about Ozempic and Wegovy. They're all over the commercials on TV.
Yes, but can you just briefly explain what is GLP-1 and what is semaglutide, just for the people out there? This is the benefit of the show. You get to have
I'm going to get into that. Yes, I'm going to get into that in a big way.
Questions of a scientist and a doctor. So I'm going to jump in now and then. What can you just explain briefly? What is GLP-1s and what is semaglutide?
Yeah, GLP-1 is a hormone that's produced in the gut, and it's produced in response to a situation that looks good. So it's actually a signal that, hey guys, everything is great here. The gut microbes are doing their job, and therefore we can suppress hunger. So you become hungry because GLP-1 is not being expressed at appropriate levels. It's too weak. Your natural production of GLP-1 is too low. And so what you can do instead is take this drug, which will fool the body into thinking that everything's okay when it's not. And that's why it ends up with a lot of nasty side effects in the gut. And you get things like vomiting and nausea are very, very common side effects, but much more serious problems like paralysis of the gut. And so that I will get into this in a moment about or maybe I can do it now because it's quite interesting biology behind it, which has to do with acromantia. Sorry, that's not what I want. We keep on going with the slides as they are in the right order.
Okay, go ahead in the direction that you want to go, and if I'll have questions later, I'll chime in. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So there's many different kinds of side effects of these drugs, and one thing that's coming out now is blindness, which is really a very serious thing to worry about. And so a new study is finding an increased risk in blindness with weekly use of these popular drugs. And so that's one thing to worry about. And we can go on to the next slide because I have a number of these examples here. This is a class action lawsuit. Ozempic claims serious health issues. And some of these health issues I have it listed here. Depression, kidney failure, pancreatitis, thyroid cancer, gallbladder issues, severe stomach problems. And the stomach problems can be paralysis. And what we're finding, in fact, the studies are showing that when they did studies on people who were taking these drugs versus not, and they found that normal people, the contents of the leaves the stomach very quickly, normally, and after a few minutes, 4 minutes. Whereas people who took these drugs, it would last for, much longer, even as long as 2.5 hours. So 70 minutes was the average for the ones who were taking the drug, 4 minutes for those who were not, 2.5 hours in the worst case. And that is just way too long for the food to hang out in the stomach. And that's why you end up with this nausea and vomiting as a consequence of these drugs. And then, so you can have yeah.
Stephanie, real quick, aren't there also some sort of bacterial and toxin sort of potentials, like exposing the body to more toxins or bacteria? If we are indeed eating processed foods and foods that, shouldn't actually be in our stomach, wouldn't we be further exposed? Wouldn't there be higher risk of more bacteria growing, things like that?
Absolutely. And even I would say SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, happens when when the food is moving too slowly through the gut. When you get paralysis of the gut, things get backed up, things fester, the bacteria you have too many bacteria in the upper gut, because they're supposed to stay mostly in the lower gut. But they get into the upper gut and they cause a lot of issues.
And there's another problem there too, Zen. I mean, what you're saying is accurate, Stephanie. But first of all, when all that food is sitting on the stomach, it puts pressure on going in the wrong direction. And you can cause something called GERD or reflux, where the food goes up into the esophagus. Food is not supposed to be going up, it's supposed to be going down. That is linked to causing problems with esophagus where it widens, called achalasia, and esophageal cancer, which is a nasty cancer and very hard to detect. So you shouldn't have any bacterial growth in the stomach. And the acidic pH keeps things broken down and moving through. And there are microbes in the small intestine, but when they overgrow, that's what SIBO is, then you get a dysbiosis, just like in the colon, where the majority of the microbes reside.
Right. And then, of course, there's also the problem of inadequate production from the good bacteria. And the one that I really want to address is Akkermansia. Akkermansia is a very, very interesting bacterium that is, it's associated with diabetes. When you have low Akkermansia, it's linked to diabetes. Akkermansia actually eats only one thing, which is sulfomucins. And those sulfomucins are produced by the colonocytes in the gut. So the sulfomucins actually protect the gut barrier. This microbe eats them, and you might think that would cause them to be less, but actually high levels of Akkermansia are associated with high levels of sulfomucins. So the problem is your body's not able to make enough of these sulfomucins to feed this microbe, because I suspect of glyphosate disrupting the sulfate system. So you have insufficient sulfomucins, insufficient of these Akkermansia, and the Akkermansia actually start the system that all the microbes participate, but they produce butyrate. And butyrate is really a very key component of the story of obesity, I think, insufficient butyrate. And we've talked about butyrate before. It is really a very, very important nutrient produced by the microbes. Our cells can't make it. The microbes make the butyrate. They feed the colonocytes the butyrate, which the colonocytes love. And if they don't get enough butyrate, they're not healthy. And you get colon cancer, you get various inflammatory bowel, all these kinds of problems that show up are often linked to insufficient butyrate, insufficient Akkermansia, insufficient sulfomucins. All of that is a consequence of glyphosate, chronic glyphosate exposure. And the Akkermansia actually produce 3 metabolites that stimulate the production of GLP-1. So the whole system, you can see there's a feedback loop where the Akkermansia are eating the sulfomucins that the human cells are making, and then they turns around and produces the butyrate that the human cells love to eat. It's a big cycle that's supplying the colonocytes with butyrate, which is a low deuterium nutrient. And I think that's a critical part of the story, is the deuterium. Low deuterium nutrients are going to keep the colonocytes healthy, make their mitochondria work well, and get rid of the oxygen, which is actually the Akkermansia are very sensitive to oxygen. So when there's too much oxygen in the gut, the Akkermansia don't thrive. So it's this whole complicated system that doesn't work well when glyphosate is messing things up in the ways that it does.
Well, you always manage to bring glyphosate into the story because it's such a key factor of health in America. And I haven't seen a survey, but I would venture to say that probably 100% of the people who are obese are eating wheat that is sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent, and peas and beans and legumes. I bet if you surveyed them and checked with what they're eating, every single one of them is consuming high levels of glyphosate in their diet. And I know that there are scientists out there and farmers and doctors that would say, oh, it's not the only thing. No, it's not. But glyphosate does also increase the harmful impact of the other environmental toxins that are in the environment. So any other, pesticide, heavy metal, any other type of PFAS, phthalates, plastics are going to increase the impact on the body. And then we're going to have livers and kidneys that aren't working, not enough detoxing. And when you don't detox, what does the body do? It stores the toxins in the fat. The fat actually becomes the protective measure of the body in protecting the organs from the toxins. So this is a glyphosate issue and a toxic agrochemical issue. And I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm sorry, I may have
Well, let's
No, that's a good point.
Well, let me just jump in here before Stephanie digresses
Yeah.
further, because we're off on a digression. So when people go on those drugs and they do lose a significant amount of weight, they drop it really quickly. They are not being prepped on detoxification. With all those toxicants stored in their fat,
Right.
they have a rapid download of all the toxicants as they lose the weight. I have a colleague who's in a program enrolled in at UCLA in a weight loss program on getting free Wegovy or Ozempic or one of the GLP-1 drugs. No nutrition counseling, nothing, zero, just the drug. And that, I don't know, and maybe that is why people are also bottoming out with all these side effects from the GLP-1s, because they have this massive toxic download. Too quick.
Yes, when you
handle it.
lose your weight quickly, those toxins go to your organs. They have nowhere else to go. And so if you're not detoxing and chelating and, you know, all of that. So it's a very important issue. That's something we need to probably eventually have a whole show just on detoxing, or you need to consult with your doctor about that, because that's something that needs to be guided. Okay, sorry, Stephanie, keep going. Let's hear more about
Well, so
GLP-1.
that I was pleased to see an article in MedPage Today. I consider that to be sort of a mainstream journal, rag, so to speak. But MedPage Today had a really interesting article by a doctor who said, "I no longer think GLP-1s are the answer." And what he said was that patients get on them, and then they take them for several months, you know, or maybe a year, and then they get off of them. They finally, either lots of times because they can't afford it, because sometimes they'll get their insurance to cover it. It's $1,000 a month, and then the insurance stops covering it, and then they just go cold turkey. They stop, and they immediately acquire a ferocious appetite, and they absolutely cannot stop eating, and they gain back the weight very quickly. So it's been shown in many studies that you have to stay on these drugs for life, which is what's really, really scary to me. At $1,000 a month, it's not affordable. It's not practical. And of course, also it's causing a lot of disruption because of the fact that it's a false signal. So I think this is an important point that to think about if you start to get on it. And I know they're offering these, they're offering drugs that are not FDA approved, that have smaller amounts of this drug, of the GLP-1 in them. And that's a way to sort of lose weight more slowly, which would be a better option. I think if you're going to take these drugs, take the compounded forms that have a lot less in them, and do it more slowly, so you don't lose all that weight at once and get into this situation with all those toxins being released from your fat cells.
But Stephanie, I read somewhere too that one of the issues is that it has you lose muscle. And when you
it does. That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
when it has you get off, when you get off the drug, it has you gain back fat, not muscle.
Thank you for saying that. That is absolutely right. You lose the muscle, you gain the fat, and so you become flabbier over time as you go through cycles of taking it and then stop taking it, gain the weight back, take it again. You're going to be in a lot of trouble by the end of that whole series. You're going to have a lot of flab and not a lot of muscle.
And let's not forget that the heart is all muscle. So there's now links to heart issues with these drugs, number one, which again is shocking. And there are some integrative practitioners in my world who are starting to use these drugs in ultra low doses. So they brought down the doses. I wouldn't say homeopathic, but it might be useful homeopathic actually. But that's what they're starting to do with these drugs. So, you know, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is not the method I would use to look at why, you know, we need to deal with the obesity crisis using another pill for ill solution. But that's what is happening in the integrative world. I just thought I would mention it here.
Thank you.
And then so another issue is blindness. And Cheryl Atkinson had a Substack article on the blindness risk from Ozempic and Wegovy, which is similar to the blindness risk that you also have with Viagra, interestingly. And I don't know why there is that connection, but and I don't understand why it would cause blindness. It could be related to the toxins that are released from the fat cells. I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows exactly why that happens.
I have a theory about this. It's causing a stroke-like blindness and arteritis, and it's also causing not an arteritis, but a thrombotic event, like a clotting. And of course, my main question is, do these people get the COVID vaccine? So are we studying, is this information bias on who's gotten the COVID vaccine? Because we know the COVID vaccine causes thromboembolic events, meaning clotting. That's been shown, that's clear. So I don't know if that has added another layer on it. And I can tell you for a fact, mainstream medicine is not kind of creating an algorithm for who got COVID vaccine and who has blindness and who didn't. I'm sure they're not looking into it.
That's a very good point. That's very interesting too, that it's related to the thrombosis, which of course the COVID vaccine is also causing. And then, of course, then another article was about getting pregnant with Ozempic. And that's also a very interesting situation, because you're told you have to get off of this drug at least 2 months before you plan to get pregnant. But of course, people don't plan to get pregnant. Sometimes they get pregnant accidentally. And especially apparently people who have been infertile, as they lose the weight, their fertility actually returns. And then they end up pregnant. They have to quit the drug cold turkey. And then they have this absolutely tremendous appetite, because you already have a good appetite when you're pregnant, and you're struggling to try to not gain too much weight during the pregnancy. But when you compound it with having just come off of that drug, and of course, the drug is also risky for the baby as well. And so this is a serious problem right there. It's just to worry about these accidental pregnancies that happen with these drugs.
And, you know, another concern is most women don't find out they're pregnant until they've been pregnant for a month, 2 months, even sometimes, so what is happening to the baby during that time while that fetus is being exposed to this drug? Developmentally, is it preventing, certain organs from developing, or certain parts of, the brain or nervous system? We don't know yet. So this is a very risky situation for people. The other part of fertility and the Ozempic drug that people should take into consideration is that when they are on Ozempic and they get down to very thin levels, like anorexic levels, your period will stop. It will prevent you from what they say anyway, that that type of weight loss could prevent you from getting pregnant. But we still don't know, because apparently Ozempic messes. What is happening there, Stephanie? It's messing with the hormones and somehow.
Well, yes, it's pretending this GLP-1 that shouldn't be there, because your body doesn't want to produce it under circumstances where it's a bad idea. It's going to cause, a lot of things. GLP hormones are very do a lot.
But how is it erasing? How is it negating birth control? There's people are on birth control. They're taking Ozempic and they're getting pregnant anyway. What do you know what's happening there?
Well, I think it's losing the weight, because obesity is associated with infertility, and so sometimes just by losing weight you can regain your fertility, and that's probably also because the obesity is an indicator to the system that it might not be a good idea to have a baby under those circumstances where there is that obesity. It's sort of the body knows that obesity is bad, but it also knows that obesity can protect you from certain things like these toxins that you mentioned stuffing into the and also providing you with deuterium depleted nutrients. I actually think that one of the reasons for the obesity is that the fat cells are actually storing fat, which is a low deuterium nutrient, that it can supply to the body to keep those deuterium levels low in the mitochondria. This is a theory that I'm developing.
So there is one more theory I have regarding your question, Zen, right? Like, why is it canceling birth control pills? Well, because it delays emptying, and the papers say 4 hours, it could be 12 hours of delayed stomach emptying, and you're taking a birth control pill. That birth control pill may not be getting absorbed.
Oh, that's an interesting point. I like that. That's a good one.
So not only birth control pills, nutrients may not be getting absorbed, because certain nutrients absorbed in your small intestine, in your jejunum, lower down. So there can be nutritional deficits as well as lack of drug uptake. Now, I doubt anyone has studied that, but when I read that paper, that's what I thought. Like, I just wonder if this is a potential theory as to why that might be happening.
And another thing that has been pointed out is that if you're going to have surgery, usually requested not to eat anything so that you won't have aspiration problems during surgery or when you're being knocked out. And because you hold everything in the stomach, you can still end up with aspiration, even though you fasted for the appropriate amount of time. So they're advising people on Wegovy to spend longer on a fast if they're going to do something that involves being knocked out.
Because a lot of people are not telling their doctors they're on it, because they are somewhat ashamed to admit that the fact that they need these drugs. It's not like hey, I'm on Wegovy, folks. There's been a lot of hiding the fact that people are taking these weight loss drugs, even though I've heard half of Hollywood is taking them now. So telling the anesthesiologists that they're on these drugs, the anesthesiologists say they're just going in and having to suction out all this material, because to Stephanie's point, there is a big risk of aspiration before you are paralyzed for a surgical procedure. Your lungs are super sensitive. Woo, you don't want food going in your lungs. That's the whole thing regarding reflux too. You do not want to be having that material in your esophagus, in your lungs. Doesn't belong there. They don't like it.
Right. And so now I just want to present a few slides that that I've put together that explain how obesity and diabetes lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is also known as metabolic, what is it called? Michelle, metabolic associated fatty liver disease is the new name for it. NAFLD and MAFLD, metabolic associated, because they're realizing that it's a metabolic disorder that's causing this fatty liver disease despite not being an alcoholic, which is an epidemic today. And of course, correlated with the epidemic in obesity. And this is a paper from 2010 where they showed that, so the BMI less than 30 is like normal weight, 30 to 40 is obese, and greater than 40 is morbidly obese. And you can see the incredible increase in the risk of these two conditions, steatosis being the milder case of fatty liver disease and steatohepatitis being the more extreme case. Only 3% risk for the normal weight people, but when it goes up to 40% for this very serious condition that can lead to, cancer, to liver cancer. So this is really very, very concerning. You can see this is a good reason why you want to lose the weight, to protect yourself from these diseases. And then, Anne, can you advance the slides? And I'll just, so now I've been looking into glyphosate because I believe glyphosate is the primary cause of the epidemic that we're seeing in fatty liver disease. And so there are papers that are showing evidence of this. And this one is a very important one by Paul Mills back in 2020, where they did a study on people who had fatty liver disease. And they had mild cases and severe cases, and then normal people. They compared those three groups. And they found statistically significant differences in the amount of glyphosate in the urine among the three groups, which I think is really, really remarkable, that you can just look at glyphosate in the urine and get that kind of a result. Then, of course, it's also associated with cirrhosis and then liver cancer. And then these people did a study on rats, and they gave them a very low dose of glyphosate. And then they found that the rats actually developed fatty liver disease, even with a below regulatory limits dosage of glyphosate caused fatty liver disease in the rats. And so this is another paper that I found. Human serum lipidomics analysis revealed glyphosate may lead to lipid metabolism disorders and health risks. This one is really, really important to me because I have, as you hopefully know, I have this theory that glyphosate substitutes for glycine during protein synthesis, and particularly at proteins, at places in proteins that bind phosphate. At the site where they bind phosphate, they have glycine, often multiple glycine residues, and those glycines are important for being able to bind phosphate. Glyphosate goes in place of those glycines and occupies, with its methylphosphonate, occupies the space where the phosphate should go and messes up the protein. I have identified a lot of proteins this way that I suspect would be susceptible to glyphosate toxicity. And in fact, the EPSP synthase, the one that glyphosate famously suppresses, fits this model. And so there's an enzyme called LCHAD, LCHAD, long chain hydroxyacyl dehydrogenase, a fancy name, that is a dehydrogenase that is essential for metabolizing fats. And acylcarnitine will show up in abundance if that enzyme is defective. So I don't have a paper that says that glyphosate suppresses that enzyme, but I know that enzyme has actually 4 places where it binds phosphate with multiple glycines at each place. So it has a huge glyphosate susceptibility motif in that enzyme, LCHAD. And I want to write a paper on this and try to get this published because it's very, very interesting to me. And it fits with this evidence, the observations that glyphosate messes up the body's ability to metabolize fats in the mitochondria. And that is extremely important because fats are a low deuterium nutrient. The mitochondria can't metabolize them. The body ends up storing them in the hope that someday they'll be able to be used to supply those mitochondria with that essential nutrient that's going to cause them to stay healthy. So I think this is a crucial piece of the puzzle with regard to the fatty liver disease in association with glyphosate. And then, so this is a paper on autism. And so autistic kids tend to have obesity problems and obesity-related metabolic disorders, which I think gives you a hint that autism, I believe autism is glyphosate is the primary cause of the autism epidemic. And autism is associated with actually many diseases that glyphosate also causes. So it's all one big mix of the glyphosate's poisoning you all these different ways. And one of them is, of course, to cause this obesity and these disorders. But in addition, with these autistic kids, they have the additional problem that they are often being given prescription drugs that are antipsychotics. And these drugs are very are associated with obesity because they can cause obesity. So on top of the obesity they're getting from as a consequence of the glyphosate, they could also be getting obesity as a consequence of these drugs that they're taking. And so that's all I wanted to say there in that little presentation.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I want to chime in that I did some research beforehand and I'm assembling an article. It's not done yet, but I watched Chasing Life by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. It's a podcast that he does. Is Ozempic really a miracle drug? And unfortunately, he had a doctor on named Dr. Jorge Moreno that said that obesity is a disease in of itself. And not only that, but a serious and complicated disease. And he says he tells the patients that there's hormones in their body that are preventing you from losing weight. In other words, there's something wrong with your body, right? And these drugs will help you. And he says that he would not advise that any of his patients, even if they're 20 years old, even if they're 12 years old, right, go off these drugs ever, just as you would not advise a diabetes patient to get off insulin. So he is comfortable prescribing it for lifelong, lifelong for patients. And then I consulted with a scientist, Francois Hamon, from full professor at University of Ottawa. He's a nutrition and metabolism expert who completely disagreed. And he said, obesity is not genetic. It's mass in, mass out. You have to have mass to build mass, right? It's not, obesity doesn't magically happen because of some sort of genetic or hormonal disruption. You have to eat food in order to have mass, right? To have fat. So it's as simple as that. And we need to make lifestyle changes and, eat healthier food and exercise. And that's it. But the problem is today we've got too many people with the disease of ease, as I call it, which is they want everything fast and cheap and tasty and affordable, right? So we have a lifestyle situation going on here. We also have, besides this physical health problem, we have a mental health problem in America. And 1 out of 6 Americans now have mental health issues. The CDC says it's 1 out of 36 children that have neurodevelopmental disorders, things such as autism. Our moms say it's 12 out of 13 of the children in a kindergarten. The teachers that I've talked to say 12 out of 13 of their kids are on somewhere on the spectrum. So we have a serious issue, and there's a new study by Mawson and Jacob that Michelle, you're going to talk about a little bit around the shocking discovery around neurodevelopmental disorders and 9-year-olds. Can you tell us about that, please?
Oh, I'd love to. And thank you. Let's move this on. What paper caught my eye a couple of weeks ago? It's this paper. And I read this paper by IPAC. James Lyons Wheeler runs the organization. Thank you, James Lyons Wheeler, regarding vaccination and neurodevelopmental disorders, NDDs, of 9-year-old kids enrolled in Medicaid. And it was a study of over 47,000 patient visits based on diagnostic coding using codes, what we call ICD-9 at that time, now ICD-10 codes. Next slide, please. It's a little bit of a presentation, but I want to go over this paper because this is how we, the new MDs, take the scientific data, share it with you, break it down in little bite-sized bits that Zen does a great job that we can all digest. And what they found in this amazing paper and study was by age 8, 24% of kids are diagnosed with one or more of these NDDs, neurodevelopmental disorders, with ADHD being the most common. Those are the kids who can't sit in their chairs. Boys greater than girls, non-whites greater than whites, preemies, at risk. We're going to look at that. Autism, you heard from Zen, 1 in 36 in California, our great state, 1 in 22. And according to Dr. Senef, she predicted 1 in 2 by 2025. We might get there by 2030. Now we're not because of MAHA and the great work by RFK Jr. and our own Zen Honeycutt, by the way.
I think it was actually 2032.
Yes.
Or 2032.
2032. Born in 2032. Born.
So, and thank you. And of course, we know that here in the US, most of our kids, almost all of them, have received at least one vaccination, 94%. Move on. The next slide, please. So this study wanted to look at the association between vaccination and kids under 9. Why under 9? Because by then they've had their diagnoses confirmed, and they look at this time period. And vaccination, what does that mean? They have had a healthcare visit with at least one vaccine-related diagnostic code. Because when we code in the clinic, we code vaccines get a code. That's right. You're coded for everything. If you didn't take a vaccine, there's a code, just saying. Okay, Florida, Medicaid, 4th largest Medicaid population in the US. Just so you know, there is a large population of kids who receive Medicaid, federal money. Next. So before we look at some data, I just want to explain one statistical fact. Oh, no, not statistics. Yes, odds ratio. And that is simple, a measure of association between two events. That's it. And that's how you calculate it. And 1 means no difference. Greater than 1 means higher odds. Less than 1 means lower odds. That's all you need to know. So these slides will be on the new MDs in our show notes because our producer, Ann Temple, has done a great job. God bless you, Ann. Next. So, oh, whoa, look here. Here's the odds ratio of these neurodevelopmental disorders status in 9-year-old Medicaid kids. And you look here, it broke down all the different disorders, autism, ADHD, seizures, learning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through each one, but you get the picture, and you can see unvaccinated versus vaccinated. Now that's not 2.8 or 2.7%. That's fold, which means 2.7 times, which would mean, let's say, an ASD, which is 270%. So wow. That's what fold means. So visually, you get the picture. Next slide, please. Ho, ho, preemies. Oh my gosh, what is a preemie? That is a baby who's born under 37 weeks, 40 being the human gestation. Preemies are under 37 weeks. And so they have different classifications on how preemie is preemie. But you can see the unvaccinated preemies, they did fine. The only thing they had a higher risk of were seizures. They did not have a higher risk of learning challenges. But preemies with vaccinations, look at those numbers. There's the odds ratio. Next, please. So one more term, and then I'll stop. I swear, people, they're like, no, she's going to give us another term. Yes, one more. Relative risk. One more. That's the measure of the likelihood of an event occurring in one group compared to another. The likelihood of an event. And so you can see it's the ratio of the probability. Okay, I won't get into that. When it's 1, there's no difference. Greater than 1, there's a higher risk. Lower than 1, lower risk. Simple. Next slide. Oh, look at this. Here's the relative risk of the diagnosis of autism with increasing number of vaccine visits. This is a dose response curve. What does that mean? That means the more vaccine visits these kids had, the higher the rate of ASD, autism, autistic spectrum disorder. So 11 or more visits would be a classic American schedule of kids who get all those vaccines, mostly by age 5. You've all seen the American Academy of Pediatrics and ACIP's American Committee on Immunization Practice recommendations. There's a lot of vaccines. I think 72 by 5. Please, it blows my mind, but you see the relationship. This is damning. Thank you, Dr. Mawson. And I think I forgot the other co-author. I apologize. But Dr. Mawson also looked at this earlier and found a similar relationship with vaccines. And I think he was studying allergies, asthma, ear infections with kids who were vaccinated or sicker. And he looked at 666, can't believe that number, kids in his previous study. Okay, move on. Next, please.
Well,
so
1 second, Michelle. So yes. 11 visits, that's 11 visits with all of the vaccinations that you would get at that visit. So how long does it take for a baby to have 11 well visits in the first couple of years of its life?
So the way visits usually go, you get a visit usually after first week of life. You know, there's the check-in visit, 2, 4, 6 months. Some pediatricians do 9 months, not all, and then 12 months. Then there's a 15-month visit that coincides with a vaccine, 18-month visit that coincides vaccine. 2 years old might be a catch-up visit. Then you get yearly visits until 5. And then at 5, you get your pre-entry to school vaccines. Now, since
so 3 years old and then 4 years old would be 11 visits.
By by 5 years old, they've had the
From what you just said, a 4-year-old would have had 11. Are you
0.
hearing me?
Yeah, 0.
She was counting.
So from what you just said, a
Good math.
4-year-old would a 4-year-old would have 11 well visits. Now, this doesn't count the times when a parent might go in for a sick visit and they might say, hey, you need to catch up on your vaccines, and give the kid a vaccine even when they're sick. So
Absolutely. Or they go in for cold and like, oh, you didn't get your flu shot. Let's just give you that flu shot. So there's a lot of that goes on too with visits and kids. So let's catch you up. There's a lot of catch up visits, and you never in general vaccinate a kid when they're sick. I don't know what people are thinking about. I mean, if vaccines in general, we're going to have a whole conversation about that, but that is just blows my mind, because the immune system is impaired, or it's working to fight whatever illness the kid has.
But a lot of people notice that their kids get autism around the 9-month, 18-month mark, because they can see the development and the communication skills and the babbling and the eye contact and the development happening. And then they get the vaccine, and then the next day they lose all eye contact. They're not walking, they're not talking. They're, as young as 10 months, 18 months old. So this statistic is showing, it's showing that it may not be 4 times. I mean, it's 4 times more likely, 4.4 times more likely to get autism or neurodevelopmental delays after 11 visits. But clearly your child could develop it much earlier. It could be at 1.7 or 2.2 times more likely around those ages. Yeah. So this is really, I just have to say from a mom's perspective, that slide is very impactful and really, really upsetting, because we trusted our doctors. We trusted when they said to us, you need to get your child vaccinated, that otherwise they could die, they could be harmed. And I just want to take a moment just to acknowledge the mothers who trusted their doctors. I was one of them. We all just wanted our children to be healthy. And now the information's coming out that's showing that we were actually putting our children at risk. This is an extremely impactful conversation. So thank you for sharing.
You're so welcome. And yes, I couldn't agree more. And though clinically, when I saw most kids deteriorate is after 15 months, after the MMRV. We give them measles, mumps, rubella, varicella cocktail. Not a good thing. And that's where I saw most kids regress. Some kids have signs of autism earlier and it's not picked up. Some are absolutely 100% fine and then have a rapid digression or regression of all their milestones that were gained. That's why we call it spectrum. It's all over the map, what kids do. One thing I would say, what this study pointed out, and I just want to bring it up, is that of children who were not vaccinated, which was over like 5,000 kids who didn't receive any vaccines, 11% of them did have neurodevelopmental disorders. So are vaccines a cause of autism? 100%. Are they the cause of autism? It is multimodal, multifactorial. There are other environmental toxins driving the encephalopathy, or the autoimmune encephalitis that has affected children's brains who have these neurodevelopmental disorders. It's a brain inflammation. We can call it encephalopathy or encephalitis. It's not caused by an infection. There's infectious encephalitis from viruses and bacteria. It's not that. It's autoimmune encephalitis from these triggers from environmental toxicants. And I believe, Stephanie just mentioned glyphosate in autism. I believe it's the glyphosate aluminum cocktail.
Yes, I agree.
The autism.
And they support each other. Glyphosate escorts aluminum into the brain.
Yeah, and I have to point out, Moms Across America tested 5 childhood vaccines for glyphosate because we saw that the ingredients in them, such as bovine serum, chicken serum, we know now that there's gelatin from pigs who eat grain sprayed with glyphosate, and the glyphosate goes into their pig tendons that are ground up and made into gelatin. We found glyphosate in every single one of them. And we know from Stephanie's work and Chris Exley's work that glyphosate chelates and can carry aluminum into the brain. And Chris Exley's work has shown that aluminum is in the brain in higher levels in particular parts of the brain of children with autism that are deceased, and Alzheimer's patients that are deceased. So I believe that Kennedy and many scientists really do know what's causing autism. They just need maybe a little further clarification, or maybe not. Maybe they will just, bang out a program to get rid of this problem. But we can see clearly from the study that you're sharing with us that vaccines contribute to neurodevelopmental delays, increase the risk anyway of
It's really
neurodevelopmental
exciting
delays.
to
Yeah.
see this study, and there have already been 3 or 4 other studies that have done something similar and have also shown it, but with much less data, because it takes a lot of money to do a big study. And so it's exciting to see this particular study come out with so much data that's so compelling.
And, but this was a privately funded study, the IPAC, our James Lyons Wheeler's organization. So it wasn't funded by the NIH or the HHS. This had to be privately funded. Last slide, Ann, this is so you can see, this is a conclusion. I want to say one thing about this. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I want to say something about preterm births. When I saw that preterm and vaccination, those learning challenges off almost 10%, almost tenfold. That's 100% higher. Now, in Florida, I said, what is the rate of preterm births in Florida? It's 10%. Preterm births are associated with IVF. IVF births have a high rate of preterm, about 23%. Now, half of American couples now are seeking medical assistance for fertility. It's at least 1 in 9 couples that are infertile, at least, and I suspect it's even lower. It's even lower than that, higher, but lower number, like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6. So these preterm babies who are a product of lack of fertility, higher from IVF, and then they get vaccinated, you can see the nightmare. We are with increasing rates of prematurity and persistent vaccination, we're going to have even higher rates of these neurodevelopmental disorders and learning challenges. What you said, Zen and Stephanie, is where school teachers cannot teach because the classrooms are one big IEP that the kids need so much support. So my radar is up with that particular fact. And you guys, thank you for listening to this whole long presentation. Didn't mean it to be so wordy. It will be up on the new MDs on our website. You can go back and look at them. So I just want to wrap that up and alarm, but Robert F. Kennedy is going to help us reverse this. Zen, maybe you should jump right into that.
Absolutely, I will. But I do want to sum up what you just said too about the preterm births. Glyphosate has been shown to contribute to preterm births. Glyphosate has been shown to cause miscarriages, infertility, decline of sperm. So it's glyphosate from both sides.
And also polycystic ovary syndrome. Polycystic ovary syndrome in women is associated with obesity and is very high in the population and the primary cause of female infertility. And it's caused by glyphosate, polycystic ovary.
So the number one thing that we want to see Bobby Kennedy do as head of the HHS is somehow get our farming system to stop spraying glyphosate and other toxic chemicals as a drying agent. Europe does it. Many other countries around the world do not use glyphosate as a drying agent. That would reduce the exposure to our citizens by 80% of glyphosate. That it's not enough. We need to have 0%, but it would be a great start. And the Trump establishing the president's Make America Healthy Again Commission on February 13th was a fantastic Valentine to Americans, showing us that, you know what, he loves America, wants to leave a legacy. And Bobby Kennedy is heading up this fantastic Make America Healthy Again Commission. They have, you can take that down. They have 100 days to assess why Americans and children are getting sick, and then an additional 80 days, so 180 days to put forth a program, a plan, a strategy on how to make America's children healthy again, focusing specifically on children. So we're extremely excited about that. They're going to be having roundtables and meetings and conventions or whatever, all kinds of things to bring in experts from all across the country, which I think is very smart because there's a lot of experts that can't move to DC. But they need to tap into their expertise. So I think that a lot of the leading experts across the country and around the world, I'm hearing from people from Canada, the UK, Japan, that are thrilled that Kennedy's in the White House and they want to support America. It's really extraordinary. So what Moms Across America has initiated is a 100 Days of Health Awareness campaign. So what we're saying is that over the next 100 days, while RFK and the heads of the administration do their research and dissect the science and set their egos aside and work together, we too must do our parts alongside Bobby and collaborate as well. So what we're looking at is, let's go Doge. on our households for health. Let's get in there and dissect and look and go in and see what's underneath our kitchen cabinets. You can take that down, Anne. What's underneath our kitchen cabinets? What's in our clothing? What's what kind of clothing do we eat? What kind of food are we eating? What kind of lawn care are we using? What kind of dog flea ticks things are we using? We have a list on our website of 20 different areas to start looking at, but we want to have one for every day. We want people to be able to go in there and pick whatever they want to choose that day, or I'll post about it, and that can be inspiring to you. And let's look at, analyze. How often do we take the time to do that, right? Let's look and analyze and see what is going on in our households that could be contributing to making our family sick. And let's get those things out. Let's purge them, okay? And share on social media. I mean, I want to see images of people with all of their, body care products or their shampoos and being like, look, here's polysorbate 80, here's, parabens, here's all these different, and they're putting them in the garbage, right? And perhaps here's the other brands that they're using instead, or, just giving solutions as best they can, or just saying, I'm just getting rid of these. I'm getting these out of my house. So that's the initiative that we have right now. And there'll be a lot more coming out from Maha, from Kennedy, on things that we can do. But I think that's the number one thing that we can do is start looking at our own health. This morning I posted, I'm posting on my personal TikTok because my phone was hacked and I lost access to my Moms Across America TikTok. So I'm posting on my personal TikTok every day, something that I'm doing. And today I started out with a meditation and a prayer on the beach for 20 minutes. And I think that's a way that if Americans started that way, started your day with intentional presence, we would all be calmer and more clear, and eventually, lower our cortisol levels and be more healthy. So that's just one suggestion that I have for Moms Across America. We're very excited about it. We're getting a great response. People are already starting to look at things. But what about you, ladies? What's something, Michelle, what's something that you have done? You mentioned something earlier before the show. What's something that you've done to be responsible for making America healthy again?
I'm with you. Like, what can I do? So the new MDs did an infant formula study. We published it last May, and we looked at 40 formulas. All 40 had toxic metals. So I live here in the great state of California. Let's make California great again. Caja, or not caca. I didn't say caca. So what's here? There is a baby food safety bill here, AB 899. But when it was passed about a year and a half, 2 years ago, they dropped infant formula. So what am I working on? I'm working on with some other really smart gals, Catherine Dodd, Lindsay Purcell, Jane Houlihan, to work with our legislators here in California to get that back picked up. That what all it says is that food manufacturers, ultra processed food, baby food, and infant formula, the toxic metals have to be quantified, identified, and transparency, letting consumers know what's in the product and encourage them to clean up their own product when we start seeing how much aluminum is in those baby formulas. That's one thing I'm doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I learned recently from somebody when I discussed the baby formula, they said sometimes they add aluminum into formulas to prevent it from not sticking. So
they use it as an anti-caking agent.
Yes.
And
yeah.
It's like, it's mind blowing. Now you can pass out a lot of this aluminum. Apparently we only absorb a 0.3% through digested aluminum. However, remember, babies are born with neonatal leaky gut. And if they're also getting glyphosate, which is in the baby formula, let's say also with breast milk, because let's say they're getting both formula and breast milk, hopefully all breast milk. So that aluminum is going to be shuttled across that leaky gut right into the brain, which we talked about before. So that data may not be correct when you consider baby leaky gut.
Right. It's a travesty. Stephanie, what's your number one wish for how people can make America healthy again and support Kennedy in this commission?
Obviously, it's certified organic food. That's been my obsession, certified organic. And of course, I'm really hoping that the government will spend a lot of money to test, as I think we need to get public awareness of how much glyphosate is in the various foods that we have. And, Canada did a thing where they did over 8,000 samples of food and tested how much glyphosate was in them. This gives the population an option to know which foods are safe to eat, not organic, and which ones are not, and which ones have really high levels. And I have to not eat that no matter what if it's not organic, And so I think we need to know which foods to worry about as far as getting exposure. And the way we can know that is if the government would spend the money, test a whole bunch of foods, and release a public document that tells people how much
results.
glyphosate is in all these
Yeah,
different food
I'm
samples.
shocked. I'm shocked that Canada did that years before the United States did. I mean, you know, a lot of people tend to think of Canadians as kind of complacent in the area of like activism or policy. Not since the trucker convoy, but they really came out and did some fantastic testing that made a big deal. And that Tony Mitra, an Indian man who lives in Canada,
he's so great. He's a friend of mine.
Who pushed that, to make that happen. So please look up the book, Poison Foods of North America, on Amazon, and you can actually read a free version, I think, online. You can also see an article about it on Moms Across America. So, all right, so we everybody, you can file for a bill. You can write a bill like Michelle did and file that. You can make phone calls. There's something that we really want you to be aware of, and that is that right now, Bayer slash Monsanto, ChemChina slash Syngenta, they're pushing bills in 21 states. They have bills already filed in 9 states. We have killed 3 of them, but there's still 6 more to go that are filed right now. And what they're trying to do is get immunity, just like the vaccine companies. In fact, it's even worse because there won't be a special fund. There won't be a special court system. Anybody who got cancer or maybe a birth defect or nervous system damage from using pesticides, whether you are a farmer or a pesticide applicator or a backyard gardener, would not be able to sue these agrochemical companies for damage. There would be no lawsuits allowed whatsoever. So please go to our website, momsacrossamerica.org or .com, and click on the link of the pesticide companies want the same immunity as vaccine companies. It's about the 3rd blog down on our list. It might be the 4th by the time some of you see this, but please go to our website and see the call to actions there. There are 6 states right now. The primary ones are Iowa, Tennessee, Florida. Let's see, I think I wrote it down earlier today. Florida, Missouri. Missouri is this Thursday. So they just had a hearing about it today. So Missouri is very important to call for. And let's see, Florida, Georgia, Montana, North Dakota, Missouri, and Iowa. Those are the states that are listed right now. We have beat the bills in Wyoming, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. And why this is so important is because if even one state gets the bill passed, these agrochemical companies will use them to pass a bill federally. They've done this before. They're going to try to do it again. They're going to say patchwork quilt, doesn't work. We need to pass this bill federally. And these companies are also covering both bases by filing a petition at the EPA that will negate, eliminate, and get rid of all local pesticide laws and notifications. So if you worked very hard to get your school to stop spraying glyphosate, or your city like Miami or Portland no longer uses glyphosate, that's their law, right? Those would go away. If you signed up for a 24-hour notification to be notified when they're spraying underneath the telephone lines or along your streets or sidewalks, those notifications would go away. This petition that closes in 2 days on February 20th needs more comments, please. We have 23,000 last time we checked. That's very good, but we need to hear from everybody and anybody who wants to protect individual, state, and local rights. So please take action and go to our website. That particular article is the EPA petition. Comment period is ticking. That clock is ticking, and we need you to act on that fast. So please go to there, and you'll just click right on the link where it says comment, and you can put in a comment of however you feel about that. The fact is that the EPA doesn't have the jurisdiction to eliminate local and state rights, and it would be a massive travesty for American health if this were to be accepted and adopted. So please take actions on those 2. Let's see, anything else before we wrap up? We've got 2 more minutes. How about Girl Scout cookies? Do you want to mention anything else about Girl Scout cookies? How about Girl Scouts cook their own organic cookies with grandma? Learn how to cook cookies and sell those instead. How about that?
And get a badge too, right?
Yeah.
Your own badge.
Get a badge. Yeah.
Everyone needs to stay tuned. The Girl Scouts didn't respond to our study. We did put a study out. They didn't respond. They did put out a blog about it. We're going to write about the blog. It's being worked on literally as we speak, saying that, hey, all those toxic metals and glyphosate and AMPA, we found those cookies. Those are way below the limits. Those are not hurtful to your kids. And we, the new MDs, say, that may not be quite true, and we are going to write that up and show you why. So, Girl Scouts, I'm a little disappointed you didn't talk to us. We can make an organic regenerative cookie. We're asking them to do the right thing on behalf of children. This is not about the Girl Scouts. This is about the girls.
Thank you so much. And we want to point out that the levels that they're saying that they're attributing, sorry, their meme, one of their memes that they put out said that a girl could eat, one could eat 9,000 cookies before they reach the limit of that, whatever that the EPA says that is allowable for glyphosate and heavy metals in the food supply. So they're saying, so basically a girl could eat, 8,999 cookies and still be okay. Stephanie, what do you feel about the levels of that the EPA has stated is safe for glyphosate and heavy metals? Do you really believe that those levels are accurate and true?
This is the problem we have, that the government refuses to face up to the fact that these chemicals are poisoning us, and especially glyphosate. I feel so frustrated with the fact that the industry managed to lie to them way back when, to say glyphosate is so safe. Don't worry about it. And then they say we don't even have to spend any money testing for it. We know it's all over the food supply, but we don't care because it doesn't matter. And to say that, and then to see the kind of health conditions that we have and all these different conditions that are going up dramatically, exactly in step with glyphosate, and to say, well, correlation doesn't mean causation. I mean, the ability to just dismiss all of this evidence is shocking, especially for someone in the government, where they play such an important role to help to change the way we live and to give the message out of being healthy, and they won't do it. And it just makes me hopefully we'll see change, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we feel like there is drastic change coming, and it's going to be uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable, folks. There are a lot of people that are losing their jobs in our government right now, and there's going to be probably higher prices in some areas on some products, and many other things will get a lot better. And it's just going to take time. So in the meantime, one of the best ways to feel healthy and to get healthier is to exercise. And I promise you, if you start to exercise every day or at least every other day, even 15 or 20 minutes, you will notice a dramatic difference in your body within 1 to 2 weeks. And you'll start to notice that it just feels good. I want to do this. It won't be so much drudgery. It won't be so painful. You don't have to do it for an hour at a time. So I really urge everyone to take on 15 or 20 minutes a day and get in there and exercise. Make sure you're filtering your water. Make sure that you're getting involved with what we said about making calls and emails to state senators regarding these bills, and cook organic home cooked meals, and bring those home cooked meals. Have their child bring those home cooked meals to the schools. Now, coming soon, we will be having all kinds of. We're going to have a school lunch coalition that is coming together. We're working with people that have children's studies and farmer solutions. So what we say is that MAHA is happening, regardless of what Trump and Kennedy do. We are doing this on our own, moms across America and many groups across the country, the New MDs, GMO Science. We're collaborating with Global Wellness Forum and the MAHA Action Group. All different kinds of people are collaborating and working together because that's what Bobby inspires in us. He said at the MAHA Gallery, the gala, "Your faith in me inspires me to be the best version of myself." And I would assert that that's what Bobby is doing for all of us. He's calling upon us and inspiring us to be the best versions of ourselves. And for the next 100 days, I would assert that we can all do that and collaborate to make America healthy again. So thank you very much for being on this call. I appreciate you for hosting, Dr. Michelle Pero, Stephanie Seneff. Thank you for your wisdom. We will see you next month on the New MDs.